12 things your guests don't give a flying fart in space about. It's been half a decade since that special little ditty graced the interwebs. If you're new here, hey, my name's Jamie Wolfer. I'm your online wedding planner. I'm here to help you figure out how to plan a wedding. And my genius behind 5 years ago thought that reeling the people in with such a divisive topic would be a good idea. So, you know what I thought would be fun? Revisiting that topic and seeing how I feel about it. I'm not actually going to watch the video and react. I have a transcription of it in front of me, and to be honest, I kind of avoid that one a little bit emotionally because I'm just still so embarrassed that I wrote 12 things your guests DGAF about, as in don't give a flying fart about. Yeah, I thought I was being really funny. And here we are. And the internet never forgets because it's an elephant. It's full of information and regret. So instead, I'm going to be looking at the 12 topics and seeing how I feel about them to this day and if they still track. Now, before we get started, if you haven't seen the original video, don't go watch it. The audio quality is really bad. The video quality leaves something to be desired. But what I will tell you is that my heart's intent of making this video and video styles like it is to release you from any sort of obligation that you feel like you have to fulfill to have a successful wedding day. In fact, we make jokes about this on Instagram all the time. I'm there for Q&A Mondays and unpopular wedding opinions on Thursdays. I make jokes about like, well, your marriage doesn't count unless you have an arbor backdrop. Your marriage is still valid, regardless of whether you adhere to these things or you don't adhere to these things. You do not have to listen to some random lady on the internet telling you how to plan your wedding. But if any of these hit home, if any of these feel like they give you permission to not do any of the following items on this list, please take those to heart. I welcome you to just feel encouraged by this. If you feel spicy by anything that I'm saying or disagree with it, I invite you to take full advantage of the comment box down below because that tells the algorithm that this is worth watching. Whether we agree or not, I welcome any sort of feedback that y'all have because that is the beautiful part about weddings, is your opinion matters. And since I've been planning weddings since 2015, these just happen to be my own personal thoughts and experiences as a professional behind the scenes. Okay, so if any item on this list is something that's still very important to you, ignore everything that just came up out my mouth. Okay? Item number 1, invitations. This gets people going. Okay, starting off with a bang. I'm obsessed with invitations. In fact, I have a P.O. box specifically for y'all to send me your invitations. I'm just also not naive enough to believe that everyone keeps them. So if you do fancy invitations, do them for your own sake. Do them for those in your life that appreciate a well-designed textural element. That's me. I want your invitations. You can send them to me. My P.O. box is always listed in the description box down below if you ever feel like doing that. Save the dates, Christmas cards, I want them. Give me all of them, okay? I'm about it. But most of them end up in the trash. And I'm pretty sure I said this in the first video. They do. So if this is something where you want the wow factor or you know that there are people that will appreciate it or it's important to you, great, absolutely. I will receive that with joy, okay? But do not feel like you have to do fancy invitations because the industry has told you have to do fancy invitations because most of them are going to become worm food in the next month and a half. Just if that's a sobering number to work with. And that's if they're properly composted, which they're probably, but we're not getting into composting. Next. Number 2, programs. I can almost remember how I said this in the first video. Like, it gives something people to hold on to and look at so they can avoid awkward communication with the person that they're sitting next to. Yes, like that's cool, but unless you're doing something a little bit more culturally specific, which I don't think I addressed as much in the first video. If you have something that's unique about what you're offering, or if it's a bilingual service and you want people to be able to track along with whatever language you're using out loud versus whatever language that might be their native tongue, that would be a great opportunity to use a program, right? Absolutely. Other than that, not necessary. Maybe you have a Catholic Mass and it's going to be a little bit longer and you want to explain that to people, explain all of the elements that you're going through. Maybe there's a cultural thing of things that you want to be working through, or maybe there's something significant that you would like to share with them as well. But people don't necessarily need a table of contents or a syllabus for what your day is going to look like. They can just show up and enjoy the process. So unless there's an extra part that needs or warrants communication, do not feel like you have to have any sort of program. Because also, guess what? Those 2 go straight into the trash. Possible worm food, depending on your composting practices. But again, we're not getting into composting. Okay? Item number 3, Escort Cards. This still tracks. This still tracks. This is still valid. Really and truly, it can be a tent piece of paper. So a piece of paper that's folded in half to create a little tent with a name written on it. As long as it's legible, as long as it doesn't blow away in the wind, then yeah, it needs to communicate what table the person is sitting at. Now, most of the time, you actually don't even need an escort card in general at all whatsoever. The only time that escort cards specifically are required is when you have a plated meal. And that is where the card needs to be taken from the table or the seating chart, brought with the guest to their seat, placed in front of them. So when their plate of food comes out, whether they have any sort of food sensitivities or they've made a specific choice between vegetarian, beef, or chicken, and the server needs to know which plate to bring them specifically, that is the only time that an escort card is I count how many times have I said specifically, is specifically required. Okay? That's it. That's the only time. Anything beyond that, you can use a simple seating chart for and let people know what table they're seated at. And that's if you're doing assigned tables or assigned seating, which we'll get into in a minute. This always gets people going. But again, this one's a cultural thing, as I've learned since I made this first video. But as far as the material of what your escort card is made out of, really not important. It has a duty. It has a role. I said duty. Stick with me, guys. Okay? Stick with me. Okay? It does have a job and a purpose, but it does not need to be extra fancy. The one role it needs to fulfill is telling your sweet servers whether to put chicken or vegan in front of somebody. It doesn't need to be fancy. Item number 4, your guest book. Yep, this one still hits. I can distinctly remember my business partner, Heather, talked about how one of her clients really wanted everyone to sign her guest book. And so Heather knew that was like not going to happen. Heather knew that like it was highly unlikely that a lot of people were going to go and sign it. Why? Because we've done this before. I've seen this movie. Okay. I could write this book where a lot of people just skip it. Or they won't think about it, or they're like, whatever. So she physically took it around table to table to have people sign it. That's how dedicated she was. She was like, I got it. Don't worry about it. And like walked it around. And still even then, the thing wasn't full. Still even then, like that is paying a high paid person, a wedding planner, to walk around and do that for you doesn't make as much sense. In addition to that, how likely are you to actually look at this later? To use it later? The whole printing up a photo of you and having people sign the matting. Here's the deal. Spicy hot take on this one, okay? You're not going to want that to be on your wall for years and years and years to come because it's going to look chaotic. You're not going to love everybody's handwriting, and then it's going to go sit in the back of a closet and collect dust because you're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel like I can't throw that away because people signed it on our wedding day. It should have emotional value, but I don't want to look at it anymore because it's just a lot. It's a lot of stuff. So if you're going to do a guest book, if you're choosing to do a guest book, might I suggest doing something like an engagement photo shoot book that people can sign that you can then turn into a coffee table book. So whenever you feel like it, you can open through it and flip through some photos. Another great option would be if you have a photo booth where the picture is getting printed, have your guest print up a second batch of those and put it into the book and sign it there. So it's a little bit more interactive than just sign your name to show you existed on our wedding day, but not as large and decor oriented as a piece of artwork on your wall. Item number 5, linens. And this is something that like I differ from a lot of the more high-end wedding planners on. A lot of high-end wedding planners, they make such a big impact. Don't get me wrong, they totally do. Don't get me wrong, if you have all purple linens, people are going to notice. They're totally going to notice. But what we do here on this channel is we talk to those who are balling on a budget and who want to be a little bit more strategic with where they're spending these finances. Now, in the grand scheme of things, linens are really not that expensive of a difference when you're just choosing different colors. But if you want to upgrade to adding a lace overlay or a sequin overlay or doing a different texture of your actual tablecloth itself, that could be an added cost when you're looking at 15, 20, 25 tables, depending on the sizes of what you're looking at. So if you're looking for an easy design decision to check off your list, something that will not last with most of your guests is what your linens look like. So feel free to just check ivory or white or black or something super simple on that one and go on your merry way, because this is not going to make or break anyone's opinion on your wedding day. Number 6 on the list, first dance. Okay, the transcription says, okay, let me qualify this one for a sec. Yeah, I personally love first dances. I will always text my husband during a first dance and be like, I love you. And he's like, first dance? I'm like, yeah. How do you know? And there are occasions where I will text my dad during the father-daughter dance if they're having one. I am so schmaltzy, it's not even funny. However, please don't feel inherently like you have this pressure to perform your first dance if it's just not your vibe, if you're not excited about it. I will say there's this amazing platform that I've just recently learned about in the last few months. It's called myweddinglessons.com. His name is Hugo, and he teaches you how to dance. All of the steps that you need, literally foolproof. The dips, the turns, everything, and it's all done in an online course platform. So he can walk you through the moves that you can practice in the comfort of your own home. So you don't have to go do these dance lessons. That can help people almost feel like armored up and ready to go do something like this, because you do feel very exposed. It's the two of you just swaying back and forth on the dance floor. That can feel really vulnerable. So if you want to take a couple steps of figuring out what that looks like, of dancing in a more like dancey kind of way, great, please do that. I love Ugo. I love what he's offering with myweddinglessons.com. I think that's a great alternative to maybe some of the more expensive wedding dance choreography lessons that exist out there, or in-person classes that can kind of just feel awkward for one, if not both of you. However, don't feel like you have to do choreography if all you want to do is just literally like check that item off of your checklist, get it done, say we did our first dance, and we're moving on our merry way, all right? If you're dancers, of course everyone's going to be obsessed with your first dance. Absolutely obsessed. I love them. I have nothing against them. However, I don't like that society tells you you have to have a perfectly choreographed dance in order for your love story to be accurate and full and reach its culmination. Otherwise, your wedding day ceases to exist if you don't have a first dance, a choreographed first dance. I think I've hedged that one enough. Next, number 7, slideshows. Context is super valuable for this one. It's not to say that people don't love like baby photos of you and your fiance. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is if they have already sat through, 20, 30 minutes of toasts, of speeches, and then you choose to show a 10-minute slideshow on top of that, you're going to start losing people's attention spans. So if this happens to be something that's played in the background, or maybe played during dinner, or as a part of someone's speech, super tender, really sweet. We had one where during the father-daughter dance, they had a slideshow playing of like the father and daughter as she grew up. Tear-flipping jerker, like tear jerker. Not a dry eye in the house. However, if it had been on top of a bunch of other perfunctory things that we were trying to get through, and then everyone needed to be quiet and focus their attention on that, from a logistical and a timeline standpoint and from an attention span standpoint, it gets to be a tish more complicated when it's on top of so many other things. So if this is a value to you, find a way to incorporate it in such a way that doesn't really wane on people's attention span. Woo, number 8. Okay, this is the one that's like deeply cultural and is different in different regions, okay? I've learned a lot since making this initial video, but I'm still allowed to have my own personal thoughts and feelings on this, okay? And that's open seating. If you come from a place where you're like, we don't assign seats ever, great. So you already know that this is a thing. You're fine with it. You've seen this song and dance, no pun intended for the point 2 points ago, but you already know how this goes. For those who are entering into hosting a large event of this magnitude or attending a large event of this magnitude, the reason that assigned seating, maybe not an assigned chair, like Escort Cards are for assigned chairs, so the server knows where to place the food. That's the point of that one. An assigned table is, here's the group of people that will be seated at this table. I don't care which chair you pick or what part of the bench you sit on. This is your happy place, okay? This is where the food nom-noms come. This is where it happens. That makes it a lot easier instead of offering completely open seating and then hoping everyone gets the perfect pairings or perfect groupings so they all fit at one table together. There's one famous event that I refer to when I talk about this specifically because it's the most poignant one, but that's not to say that we haven't run into this again since then. There was a family of 6, I believe. It's been a long time, so my numbers might be a little bit off. And they literally could not find a table that they could sit at because it was open seating. And the only spots left were like 3 spots, maybe 4 at one of them. But none of them would fit the entire family of 6. So the parents would have to split with the kids or whatever. So we got a whole new table, brought it out, got ready to sit the family down, turned around for 2 seconds, looked back, other people were sitting there. So we had to bring out an additional table. This is a great example that fights specifically for my cause. I'm aware of that, but I, again, have seen this on multiple occasions where it just gets a little bit complicated when you allow people to sit wherever they want. If that's the case, you need to plan for an extra 10 to 20% seating arrangements, much like in this circumstance, for people to sit however they choose to in whatever groupings they want to. I personally don't want it Like, I want to tell people just sit at this table, okay? That's my preference. But you need to filter through what you're used to culturally and colloquially and locally. And next one, number 9. People don't care about cake. As recently as last year, I saw an entire tier of cake thrown into the trash. An entire tier. Just the whole thing. There was no box to put it in. There was no Tupperware. There was no plan of attack. We couldn't necessarily just put it in like any sort of random there wasn't a cardboard box for us to put it in, even if we found one. The guests didn't consume it. I'm not saying people don't like cake. Okay? I'm not saying that there aren't people that exist that like cake. I am not one of them. I don't prefer cake. Cake is not, I'm not a huge dessert fan in general. However, I know those people exist. I'm not saying that that's an anomaly. What I am saying is, do not overbuy on the cake. Be very strategic about this number. And be aware of when this is coming out during your event. So if you already go through dinner and you dance for an hour and then cake comes out, people have already left. So if you have 200 people there, you don't need cake for 200 people. You frankly could probably go way less on that. And you will still run into those people who don't prefer cake, who won't eat it. There will be tons that are thrown in the trash, and it's just not highly necessary. You can do a cake and maybe in addition to that, some desserts, do some different options, because that way everyone's going to find something that pleases their palate and less will end up in the trash. Just if you're going to do cake, and it's this, you want to do a multi-tiered monstrosity, I totally get where I shouldn't even call it monstrosity. That adds a really negative connotation to the conversation. But if you want to do a big old cake, I get it. Make sure you are planning ahead, though, and not doing it for every single guest. Because there are a ton that will not eat it, and there is a ton that will end up in the trash if you do not calculate accordingly. There you go. Is that a safe way of saying that? Because now we're heading into number 10, Bouquet Toss. This is okay. We do unpopular wedding opinions on Instagram every single week. Every single week I say, all right, tell me, lay 'em on me. What are opinions do you have about weddings that are going to make someone angry? And then maybe this entire video could be seen as unpopular opinions. Look at that. And this gets brought up every week, and I just don't share it because at a certain point, it gets a little annoying. That's Bouquet Toss. This one doesn't track as much as it used to. Most people aren't doing it anymore. They're just skipping it. Bouquet Toss and Garter Toss, they're over it. Just generally speaking, over it. In fact, whenever I do polls, I would say it tends to skew towards not doing a Bouquet Toss or a Garter Toss. And y'all can share your thoughts and opinions on it below. Some people still love it, but more often than not, we're kind of over it. So the good news is couples and guests don't really care about the Bouquet Toss in general. So don't feel like you have to do it. No one's going to miss it if it's gone. Number 11. Oh, favors. This is another one where I've learned a lot culturally over the years. I've learned a lot. There are some people who are like, do you know how many tias I would have chasing me down in my getaway car if I didn't have a centerpiece for them to take home? Or some sort of favor for them to bring with them? Or gosh, someone with a Greek Orthodox background was like, we have to give Jordan almonds. It's a legal requirement. Otherwise, we won't be considered married. So there's that. It might not be Greek Orthodox, but enough that I get it. There's going to be some options here. There's going to be some wiggle room here. There's going to be some cultural specificity here that may or may not apply to you. But please don't buy favors just because the wedding world told you need to buy them. Only get them if you feel like it's absolutely necessary based on what you understand your family, your friends, and your culture to have communicated. So many favors go home with a couple. So many favors go in the trash. If you want to have one, make it something consumable. Like little I was going to say shots of drinking alcohol as opposed to rubbing alcohol. Those little bottles, or cookies they can take home with them, or some sort of consumable like a chocolate bar, but we've definitely still seen a bunch of those left behind before. I actually, shocker, surprise, I love favors, and if there's ever one available for me to take home, I'll probably do that, but I am a sentimental sap. And I'm also the person that packages up the favors at the end of the night to send back with the couple. So just please don't misunderstand. I appreciate them. And I see all the hard work that my couples put into wedding days. But that doesn't necessarily mean that people are always going to remember to take them. They could be excited about them and still leave them behind. And you will be going home with a ton of them. And last but most certainly not least, grand exit. This is one that I love a good sparkler photo. I love it. I think they're dreamy. I'm obsessed with them. I want an exit photo from every single wedding that I work. But this is also something that I do for a living, you know? Like, your guests aren't going to care if they have streamers or confetti or sparklers or those ribbon wands, or if they're going to throw their arms up like, I know I said this, where, you know, you throw your arms up like you're in a third grade soccer tunnel. They don't care. What they care about is ending the night on a high note for everyone involved. It also, there's like the extra financial pressure of having your photographer there through all of dancing, and those photos you're probably not going to print up just to get that end photo. So I see all sides of that coin, dice, die, Rubik's Cube situation. This is where having your own opinion and developing what's important to you and your fiance comes in clutch. The wedding industry is going to tell you a lot of things that you should be doing for your wedding day. And a lot of it sometimes is from a bent or a skew of someone who's got a lot of money to spend. And that's why I started this channel. That's why I released this video 5 years ago. And that's why a lot of it still tracks. I'm not letting go of that phrase. I know how to use it. So I'm going to liberally apply it in conversation to remind you that I'm slightly out of touch with today's generation, but I'm trying. If you are going through all of this and you're like, I genuinely don't know what I should be doing and when I should be doing it, you are not alone. You're not supposed to know what you're doing. You've never done this before. This is like a one-shot kind of a thing, right? And there's a lot of pressure that comes along with this. I personally recommend not leaving that to chance and really finding a source that you trust. I would hope and pray that it's me. I would hope and pray that it's this channel. I also have an entire platform called The Master Plan where I walk you through as a long-term wedding planner, but digitally, where I get to walk you through how to plan a wedding, but on a budget that you can actually afford. If that's something that you need or you're interested in, I want you to be as relaxed as possible on your wedding day. So let's get through this together, shall we? So that's what I have for this week's video, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm going to link the master plan down below. If you'd like to check that out, please come join me. I do live monthly calls with you guys every single month to talk through some of these deep issues and make sure that you're putting together the best wedding day for you and your fiance. That was a rhyme, unintended. Great. How about you guys? What's an opinion that you have that's considered unpopular or something that you think that as a guest or your guests are definitely not going to care about? Drop those into the comments down below. Be sure to jump on down there, hit that like button if you like this video, and subscribe to this channel for more tips and tricks for the modern day bride. And until next week, bye guys!